What is going on, my fellow beasts? Welcome back to my channel. Now, if this is your first time visiting my channel, please do not forget to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And I'd love to hear your comments on this video today, so drop some of them down below. So today's video, as you would have seen in the thumbnail, is all about the Bronze Era sort of strongmen bodybuilders. Now, you may be asking, what's this got to do with carnivore? So I'm not all about carnivore, that's not completely who I am. The reason I'm interested in these people is their lifestyles, how they lived. I will be putting some images of them throughout this video when I speak about them individually. But just looking upon these people from around the sort of late 1800s, early 1900s, about the sort of physiques that they managed to achieve without any of the modern day sort of stuff going on, such as protein shakes, such as steroids, all of those sort of things. These people also created the way we do things nowadays. So I think it's very important to look back on how these people did things. And I do think there's some really important lessons that we can take from that. So we're going to move straight into the first person. So really this guy shouldn't need any introduction whatsoever. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have heard this man. He created sort of the bodybuilding shows. His statue is still used today at Mr. Olympia as well. So his name is Eugene Sandow. Now, this guy is really important in the world of bodybuilding. He was the guy who, as I said, first brought bodybuilding to the stage in the Royal Albert Hall here in London. And he also went around and showed his feats of strength all around the world. He was originally from Germany and he moved over to England and came to London and showed his strength here, mainly in the Royal Albert Hall. He did a lot of photography. He was Thomas Edison's first video model, just to show what video could be done, and that was in the late 1800s. So why is this man so important to me today? So we look at things in the lens of carnivore, but I also look at things in the lens of sort of natural living, things that we can do to be more optimal without having to use modern technology. Now, Eugene Sandow, looking at his diet, his basis was mainly sort of raw eggs, meat, nuts, fruits and veg. Now, some of you carnivores may sort of go, well, we can't have fruits or veg, that can't be right. But now looking back to when he was alive, we didn't have mass agriculture as we do today. We didn't use insecticides so much. Things back there were far healthier, far better, much better for you, and he ate seasonally as well. So his fruits and vegetables would just be fruits and vegetables that were available in this country instead of shipping them in from overseas. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't ship things in, but things were a lot more difficult to do so back then. And so he did used to go more down this whole foods sort of side of things, steered away from eating rubbish. Now, Eugene insisted on eating sort of plain foods, which is something again that a lot of people are adverse to doing nowadays. Everything's got to have flavour. He also wanted wholesome food, so no adding things into it. You know, a steak is a steak and a potato is a potato. You don't need to add things to it in order to make it nutritious. He restricted on indulging on foods and he ate it regularly in intervals. Now, I only eat 3 times a day. I think that's sufficient. And you have to manage this upon your level of activity and ensure that what you are eating in those 3 times a day is sufficient for your energy levels in order to support the activities that you are doing. So one of the things that he promoted was mastication, and so if that word surprises you, it's the process of chewing your food. So making sure that you break all that food down as much as possible in your mouth, so when it goes into your digestive system, it's much easier to break down, pushing less of a stress on your digestive system. A lot of people nowadays rush their food, and your body has such an awful time trying to digest it. So if there's anything you're going to take away from this video, just eat your food slowly. Make sure that you're chewing that food, getting it really broken down, and you know, in the same time savouring it as well. He believed that mastication was a key to good health. And I can see why that is. You know, you're putting less stress on your digestive system, your liver, your kidneys, so you're allowing them to be more optimal as well, which I think is a great lesson to learn from him. He also kept us away from intoxicating elements such as alcohol, sugars, processed sugars I mean, and the like of that sort of thing. And he preferred to keep them in check. Now, he did smoke, but I'm going to go on record here and say, well, smoking back then probably wasn't as bad as smoking is today. It would have just been his nicotine leaves, his tobacco leaves, sorry, and that would have been it. He wouldn't have had all of the other carcinogenics added into it as we do today, the tar or the, you know, even other chemicals. I'm trying to think of the one, but it hasn't come to my mind. It's going to come to me later. But he just believed, you know, that keeping away from intoxicating things. He said he didn't have spirits, strong spirits, but very rarely did he have beer and wine. And again, these things weren't as heavily processed as they are today, so they may have been a lot better. The wheat for the beer may have been a lot better, so they probably didn't affect him as much. But the key there was that he wasn't sort of abusing it, he wasn't going over the top with it. Arsenic was the chemical I was thinking of in modern day cigarettes. So we're looking back at a time now, this is way before steroids were made. Steroids were roughly made, I think, in the 50s, and way before even protein shakes were on the market. So he was able to build such a physique without all of these extra things. There's no artificial things in his diet that we have today. You see a lot of bodybuilders out there now. I mean, most people on Instagram are taking steroids who, you know, have a large physique. Now, these things are no good for your system. You can manage it in any way you want. If you're worried about your cholesterol on it, you can manage all that, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you are throwing in something that shouldn't be in your body, and that's going to be the other thing that ultimately affects you. Same with protein shakes. There are very, very little clean protein shakes on the market. So my opinion is to avoid them. I've been there, I've done it, and they bring you no benefit, to be honest with you. There are many other things that you can do instead of having a protein shake, many cheaper things that you can do as well than having a protein shake. So again, I think that's very interesting from a man who is in the late 1800s, early 1900s, building physiques, and you would see these pictures that I'm putting up whilst I'm speaking. I just think very interesting guy. Now, again, I've said I'm not all about just carnivore, I'm all about lifestyle, human optimizations, and I'm very interested in strength building, bodybuilding. So this is why this guy is very interesting. So during training, he advises nasal breathing, and he also advises training outdoors wherever possible. And I think that's a very interesting point, because nowadays we're all stuck in a stuffy gym, surrounded by EMFs, you know, TVs are blaring, there's negativity coming from the TVs with news and all sorts of other rubbish. You've got all of these machines, you've got music blaring out, really poor lighting, you know, usually nowadays it's LED lighting, which is awful for your system. So there's so many stresses now going into the gym that it's not just about actually working out, it's about taking all these stresses in at the same time. And I think this point about going outdoors to do your training is a really interesting one. Now, during the lockdowns, you know, we couldn't go to the gym, so I was training at home, and I did notice that benefit of being able to train outside, taking my top off and training, and, you know, gaining in any sort of elements, vitamin D from the sun, even just feeling the cold whilst I was training as well. I did feel that benefit. It did make me feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more energetic. So I can see why he says that. He also talks about bending your knees while you're training as well, and just to help with your circulation in your system. Again, another interesting point. So he was somebody who advocated high repetitions and muscle control. Now, I'm a strength trainer, so I do powerlifting. With the higher rep side of things, I can see the benefit, but I do need to do those lower reps and higher strength. So, you know, if you wanted to just build on the physique, you could absolutely do that side of things. But I think if you want to build a high strength as well, you do need those lower reps kind of ranges. But the muscle control side of things is very interesting, where he's talking about, you know, noticing how your muscles are working whilst you're training, feeling that a lot of the people in this sort of era, the bronze era, do talk about muscle contraction. So that's like, you know, if you squeeze your glutes or, you know, do a pec dance, it's about, you know, being able to move those muscles independently. And that's how a lot of these people manage to build their physique. So again, another thing to take away is just to learn how to tense those muscles individually, and that could help also with building your body. So he also advocated that women train, and I think this is really important. You know, you get a lot of women who think, oh, I don't want to go out there and train because I'll get bulky like a bloke. To be honest with you, most blokes out there aren't bulky. So the best thing for a woman to do is to go out there and have some resistance weight training. Instead of putting a high cortisol run into you, do some weight training, release those endorphins, and you will lose weight as well. So I think that's a really, really important message. Now, with a lot of these strength athletes from that era, they took a lot of cold baths. So Eugene Sandow used to take a cold bath in the morning and at night, no matter what season. And he said that this was beneficial for his muscles for recovery. And I think this is interesting. You see a lot of people nowadays doing sort of cold plunges, cold showers, and there's definitely something in this, you know, the cold therapy side of things, helping your muscles to recover. But he does say that those people who, you know, aren't of like full health, he doesn't recommend it, because it's going to raise your cortisol levels. It's going to cause you, you know, a lot of stress on your system. So you need to look at that balance. Are you ready to do that kind of cold therapy? Is it going to put more stress on your body than it should do? So you take away from this again is you test your body, see if it's something, you know, if you feel stressed after it, then maybe it's not right for you just yet. There's some things that you need to deal with. If not, you know, I think it's something that can definitely help you within your training regime. So he used simple training methods. He believed that you only needed dumbbells, and I can see this as well. If you go on him, I'll just Google it and sort of Eugene Sandow workouts. A lot of his training programs were just dumbbells or using chest expanders as well, which I recently bought myself, and you know, I do feel the benefit from that. And he says, you know, if you wanted to get that desired figure, dumbbells is all you need, body weight sort of stuff, calisthenics. So again, you don't really need to overcomplicate this with all the machines that you have in the modern gym. You can do it very simply with just a set of dumbbells. And another thing I will go back on again is the outdoor training, the fresh air, the natural light, getting away from all of those LEDs, those EMFs that are just putting stresses into your body. Now, if you wanted to go and read a little bit more about Eugene Sandow, I'd like to just give him a quick Google. But there is a very good book that he wrote called Strength and How to Obtain It. I will put a link down below for you to read that. It's a really interesting book. First part is all about his sort of methods on lifting, and then he kind of goes on later to talk about his life stories, a bit of a biography after that. So that is Eugene Sandow. Now, moving on, I got another very interesting person from that era. So his name is George Hackenschmidt. So he was Estonian, and they called him the Russian Lion. So he again moved to London and sort of built himself up as this, he was a wrestler mainly, but also sort of strongman physique athlete. Now, I'm going to go through a lot of quotes that he said and talk about the kind of message that he put out there. Now, if you don't recognize the name George Hackenschmidt, you may have heard of the hack squat. Now, the hack squat was invented by George Hackenschmidt. Also as well, if you haven't heard of him, you probably do an exercise most weeks that he invented, and that's the bench press. So we have a lot to thank George Hackenschmidt for. Now, the first quote I'm gonna sort of take from him, one of his most famous ones is, "Health can never be divorced from strength." So as long as you are strength training, as long as you are building your muscles and, you know, giving yourself a challenge, you're going to have health. You're going to have some form of health. And I think that's a really important message to take away from him. I do quite like the simplicity of it. Okay, life isn't that simple. There are other things to take into factor. But as a general basis of a message, I do like that one. So the next one I'm going to take from him is a bit of a longer one, so bear with me while I read it. So, I have come to the distinct conclusion that the physical constitution of the human frame never was intended merely for study, but rather for manual and bodily exercise. I have found that those who have lived an active outdoor life have retained and enjoyed brightness born of health for longer than others. Now, the interesting point to take from that is the active outdoor life. I think that's really important. Again, similar to sort of story what Eugene Sandow said. Outdoor living, you know, getting that sunlight, the fresh air. Nowadays we are so indoors, you know, our jobs are all behind a desk, behind an LED screen, under an LED light, EMFs everywhere, and we're becoming so stressed. And, you know, that's causing so many issues, not just in the mind, but in the gut, in your skin, all sorts. We're all guilty of it as well. You know, I have a very sedentary job, and it's easy just to sort of sit back into it, but you need to, is making that conscious effort to get yourself outside regularly, to get that sunlight, see the sunrise, see the sunset, use those things naturally, because they're here for a purpose. We've evolved for a purpose with the sun. Let's use it. So another interesting quote is, man is born without frying pan or stew pot. The purest natural food for human beings would therefore be fresh, uncooked food and nuts. Again, the carnivore community may come at me and say, well, we can't have nuts, it's not going to be any good for you. Okay, maybe you're right. Some people tolerate them better than others. So if you do tolerate them, I don't see why you shouldn't have them. Now, the raw food side of things I think is very interesting. We do see a lot of people in the carnivore community eating raw meat, raw eggs. Again, that really leans back into what Eugene Sandow was talking about. I do think there's something in that, and you know, overcooking food can take away the nutrients, can take away what we actually need to take from it. You know, if we were to kill an animal, we have the system, we have the acidic stomachs that can break down any of the bacteria that would be on raw meat. Obviously, I'm not telling you to go out and eat raw chicken. That would be stupid. You need to cook chicken. However, things like beef, which wouldn't be too bad, you can eat raw, such as steak tartare. And obviously veg as well. He talked about vegetables. He did eat fruit and vegetables, and he again talked about eating them raw instead of cooked, because you're taking away that nutrition, and we wouldn't naturally in the wild be able to cook these things in a saucepan or whatever. So I find that an interesting comment. So I know also in his period there was no level of junk food or processed food that we have today. It's everywhere now. You go on the high street, every single shop is in processed food junk. There's very few shops, bar the butchers, that are actually good food for you. So we have to remember that. We need to go look at their food as being quite different to the food that we have today, and adapt ourselves to that. So other quotes from him. So he talked about the 4 channels: the lungs, the skin, the kidneys and the intestines. If these 4 channels are in good working order, then the man is healthy. Okay, so you know, there's things, you know, look at the intestines. If you've got SIBO, you know, your intestines are not in proper working order. You're not healthy at that point. Kidneys as well. If you're not detoxifying, got those detox pathways, then again, you're not going to be healthy. Your lungs, if you're not breathing properly, all of these things, you know, we need to check on. And I think that's down to living a natural lifestyle and eating naturally as well, as we should have done. Just looking at some of its other comments as well. So an interesting point here: elimination is one of the biggest aspects of our health. If it is not working properly, then things get backed up and our bodies deal with more toxicity. Then they may be able to handle. Look at your life, and do you seem to have great elimination in each of these 4 channels? So again, if your body is dealing with far too many toxins, then you need to sort of reduce things. You know what you're putting in. You may need to do an elimination diet where you reduce the amount of stuff you're putting in, so your body can deal with that toxicity in your system. Another interesting point I found from him is the ordinary mortal may be reading his daily paper or book whilst taking his meals. His mind is occupied with what he is reading instead of being bent on acquiring nourishment. So to put that into a modern context, most people now are watching something on TV whilst they're eating, or on their phones. All of these sort of things are distractions actually from what you're actually eating. Take that moment just to sit with your meal without any distraction and just eat it. focus on that and enjoy it as well, because you're putting less stress on your body at that time. So talking about all that outdoor stuff that we mentioned earlier, man is a creature of light and air. I should therefore recommend little or no clothing when training. Now, obviously we can't go to the gym fully naked. I think you'll get kicked out for that. But wearing as little as possible. So put some shorts on, a vest, that is all you need to wear. You know, you don't need to be wrapped up in all of these plastic clothing such as leggings and, you know, these long sleeve Under Armour tops that are just suffocating your body. Let's, you know, draw that down and just, you know, try and wear as little as possible. If it's the summer and you have the ability to train outdoor, take your top off, get that sun. Like if you've got any sort of equipment at home, train in your garden, take your top off. It's your garden. You can do what you like. Again, I won't recommend going naked. But I do think that there's really interesting points again from both of these guys who talked about outdoor training, getting that light and getting that fresh air, going back to nature. So I do have a bit of an example of George Hackenschmidt's sort of daily schedule. This is, I thought this was just some interesting points to take away. So he woke at 7 a.m. He would have a short cold rub or a bath, so a shower or bath. Again, cold water therapy, you know, very popular these days, but it's for good reason. These guys were doing it back then, and just look at their physiques. And he says he went to sort of tepid water in the winter. He wouldn't dry off with a towel. He would say that he would exercise and that would dry him off. Other than that, he would say use a very rough towel and vigorously rub yourself down. And he always says to do 15-20 minutes of light exercise following that sort of routine in the morning. So in the morning he would have his breakfast and followed by a long walk. Then at sort of midday-ish time, he would do any sort of vigorous exercise, so whether that's running or weight training or you know, cycling, all of those sort of stuff. He would then follow this up with lunch, and if needed, he would have a nap. So he's listening to his body. If he's tired, he would sleep. So towards the evening, sort of 5-6 o'clock, he would do more vigorous exercise for all of his muscles. Around 7:30 p.m. he said he would have dinner and rest or recreation outdoors. So he would recommend that his rest was done outdoors. So getting that fresh air, maybe seeing the sunset, those natural sort of pathways again. And then he went to bed quite late, in my opinion, 11 p.m. That was his bedtime. And he said Sundays, no training. So you're probably asking me, so what diet did he eat? Now, you may be shocked for me to be promoting this on this channel, but he did eat a largely vegetarian diet. And I'm going to caveat that in a moment. He said that he had a largely vegetarian diet of fresh, uncooked food and nuts. And he abstained from alcohol, coffee and tobacco. And he also said moderation in sexual intercourse as well. I think that is to promote the development of testosterone more in order to help build his body. Now, I'm going to caveat what he said about the vegetarian. So from my research of him, he actually went more vegetarian later on in his life when he was doing less training, less wrestling, less sort of feats of strength. A lot of research I've read is that there's a story of him visiting a friend in London where he ate 8 or 9 eggs, a porterhouse steak and a whole camembert cheese in one sitting. So all animal products, not very vegetarian. Now, whether there's any truth in that, not too sure, but I've read a lot about him that says that he did eat a lot of meat still. He also allegedly drank 11 pints of milk per day. So again, another animal product that he's gaining his protein, his fats, and obviously still getting some, you know, high amount of calories too. So whilst he said he was doing vegetarian, I don't think that was fully true until later in his career, where he was sort of winding down, getting a bit older. He started going to more vegetarian. Don't recommend it myself, but that's what he did. And again, we can only go with the information that we're given at that point. But what I do find interesting there is about his philosophy of raw natural food. So again, his fruit and veg that he would have had during that time was uncooked, was unprocessed, was a lot healthier back then, so it wasn't covered in all the chemicals that we farm with today. They would have been from local greengrocers instead of from Tesco's or Asda down the road, where they sit in there for ages. You know, they would have come fresh. They would have been from that greengrocer, local farm. All of these things I think are really important points to take away. And I do find the 11 pints of milk part interesting. He was basically doing protein shakes for himself today. Now, a lot of people can't tolerate dairy, me being one. I do suffer with it. I tend to get quite dry skin when I have dairy, so you know, I wouldn't be able to do that as much as I'd love to, you know, because of the price. You know, it keeps it cheap and you're getting a lot of calories, a lot of fat, a lot of protein. It's not for everybody, so you have to modify how you do it. As long as you follow those sort of steps that he says, keep it natural, keep it raw, and just live a more human lifestyle instead of this sort of technological one that we have nowadays. So I do recognise I've kind of gone on a little bit on this video. It's taken some time. There are a few other sort of strength athletes of the time that I do think are very interesting. I won't get into them in this video, but if you wanted to go and research them, you've got the Saxon brothers. You know, they used to eat a lot of meat. For example, I think for breakfast they would have 24 eggs each and 3 pounds of bacon. So you know, that is a lot to eat. I don't even think I could eat all of that in one sitting. So again, very interesting to go and find these guys out. Give them a quick Google, the Saxon brothers. You've also got Bobby Pandour. He's another interesting one. Maxick. All of these really interesting people. If you're into your bodybuilding, especially the natural side of it all, please go check these guys out, because you know, they're legends in their own rights, and just the message they put out, just absolutely, you know, what we need to get back to today. Going back to George Hackenschmidt, he also wrote quite a few books. A really good, interesting one is called The Way to Live. I think if you're looking to change your life, that is a good, interesting book to sort of go back to basics, go back to natural living. So thank you for joining me today in this video. I'd love to hear your comments about these guys. I think they're absolutely amazing, really interesting people for that era. You know, they led their field in bodybuilding and strength training. So yeah, give them a check. Chuck some comments down below. I'd love to have a chat with you about these guys. And don't forget to hit that subscribe, like and share button. But until next time guys, take care.